Thank you. Welcome to this next session, the session on 21st century statecraft and soft power. Now, one of our panel, we have a very distinguished panel to discuss this issue of soft power, a panel that draws together practitioners of culture as well as diplomacy, and I will refer you to the program for the conference for bios. So nothing is worse than to hear the panel chair introduce everybody just by reading out the bio. So I won't do that, but please examine the program. But if Mr. Cull has to rise unexpectedly and leave the platform, it's because he has a meeting to go to. He is not objecting to anything that any of the other panelists or the audience have said. So please, he is not making a statement. What I'd like to do is begin by exploring the issue of soft power just in 5 minutes to set the scene. Talk about the idea, some real-world examples, and then I want to just set out why public diplomacy and soft power are not quite the same thing. The term soft power was coined in late 1988 by Professor Joseph Nye of Harvard as a way of thinking about the quality of attractiveness in a nation's culture and values and explaining how that could be a resource for the nation as real and as significant as economic strength or military strength. Nye deployed this term soft power to refute the argument, current at that time, that America was in a time of relative decline. He said, no, America is strong in part because people admire the values and culture of the United States. The term was embraced to explain the changes that were happening in Eastern Europe at that time, but unfortunately was a little misread within the United States as being a quality of economic strength. And I think that the American soft power is much more than just economic strength. In fact, America's wealth is sometimes a negative. It sometimes pushes us away from the United States. Some real-world examples of this concept of soft power. Think about how soft power explains the moral force that actors like the United Nations Organization, like the Dalai Lama, Mandela in South Africa, or that the memory of Mahatma Gandhi bring to the causes and the nations associated with those individuals. Moral force means international strength, and in so many cases. Secondly, soft power is significant because hard power is becoming increasingly difficult to use. When we deploy hard power, it is seen all around the world in real time. Second point about this difficult use of hard power, when we use hard power, we turn our enemy into that most potent of things in this world today, and that is a victim. A victim. This is something that Israel has learned to its cost. In the war between Israel and Hezbollah, Israel won in the classic military terms, blew up more things, moved more flags on the map, inhibited its enemy's ability to strike, and yet we know Hezbollah won because it had that victimhood, it had that soft power, it had its soft power enhanced by the deployment of Israel's hard power. Thirdly, soft power explains how some nations suddenly have a surprise resource. The Thais have been delighted to find that because people around the world enjoy Thai cooking, Thailand as a nation state is taken more seriously. It gives Thailand an edge over its regional competitors. But just as we can talk about soft power, the power of our ideas and our words to attract, so we have to think about its negative. The power of our deeds and words to repel. What happened at Abu Ghraib prison was repulsive, and it pushed people away from the United States. The words of intemperate American statesmen like Donald Rumsfeld pushed people away, especially in Western Europe. And I think we have to guard against undermining our own soft power. What is needed is not foreign policy run exclusively to please international audiences, but rather a combination of hard and soft power. In the United States, they have developed the term smart power for exactly the reason that Indians have been thinking about maybe soul power being a good idea, because what senator can endorse something that is soft? Nobody wants to be soft. People do at least want to be smart, or in India's case, soulful. Public diplomacy and soft power are not the same thing. We know that states can have a public diplomacy policy without soft power. Think of North Korea. States can have soft power without a public diplomacy policy. Ireland recently had an inquiry to see if Ireland needed if Ireland needed a cultural diplomacy agency on the lines of the British Council. And what their inquiry told them is no, people love Ireland without them investing in their cultural diplomacy. They have Irish bars. Irish music is all that Ireland needs for people to feel good about the country. States can have very little soft power left and poor public diplomacy. And this is the case in Israel at the moment, where many people, including Eitan, are working hard to rebuild Israel's public diplomacy. Soft power is a resource, rather than being the same thing as public diplomacy. Soft power is a resource that exists in the mind of the audience that can be leveraged through public diplomacy. And this is what the United Nations, I think, does, what Dr. Thoreau did very effectively when he was running the Department of Public Information at the UN. That's all I wanted to say, just to set up the discussion. I'd now like to call on Dr. Thoreau to give his take on the importance of soft power. So the floor is yours, Dr. Thoreau.